very odd term, samadhi, that has varying connotations depending on where we are on this continuum of our practice. So some of you who may have practiced yoga, you may know that samadhi is the eighth limb of yoga. It is sort of the culmination of a yoga practice. And often it's translated in the yoga tradition as absorption. Absorption into the absolute, into the divine. Or from a yoga standpoint, that Atman, that aspect of bright, luminous spirit, quote unquote. So Atman is the Sanskrit term for spirit, perhaps. It's not really soul. Soul has a different term. It's called jiva. Jiva is the Sanskrit for soul. And that actually implies still suffering, residual emotional content, and so on when it comes to soul. But Atman, this notion of a bright sense of spirit, the most refined form of who we are, is one part of the larger divine reality that is also called Brahman. Remember, we just practiced on the cave of Brahman from the yogic standpoint. This is not contrary to Buddhism because of the Dharma Dhatu and this notion that all things are luminous. You see this in different forms in varying Buddhist traditions, and even Pure Land Buddhism, where the Buddha Amitabha, the ultimate form of Buddha, is the Buddha of infinite light. Yeah, and there is a form here, right? But ultimately, these are conventional representations of ultimate reality. So I'm hoping I'm not confusing people, but there is a sense, an ecology of these different languages. Now, in Buddhism, we have this notion of non-self, which would be akin to acognitive or asamprajñata samadhi. We're going to get technical here, which is acognitive samadhi. It is a sense of concentrative absorption that has no vestige of self left. That is no different in many ways than cultivating the jhanas in Theravada Buddhism and the Buddhisms of the various absorptions. And this is why this term samadhi can get very confusing for people, because it's often just translated in Buddhist contexts as concentration. Now, given what I just said, does that help? Is it really just concentration? No, it's a lot more than that. And that said, there is a continuum where concentrative attention begins the journey of training the mind in shamatha. So another odd term, if you've never heard this word shamatha, shamatha means calm abiding, peaceful abiding, or tranquil abiding that is attained through a sense of concentrative stillness, of bringing the mind onto an object of meditation, whether your eyes are open or closed. If your eyes are open, you can practice this with the flame of a candle or a flower on a table or on an altar of some kind. Or you can practice open eye meditation on a tree if you're out in nature, really anything that is conducive to the mind state you're seeking to cultivate. Yeah. But if your mind is closed, it may be, so in shamatha, there are varying stages of images that people may concentrate on, such as, of course, the breath, beginning with the tip of the nose, and that begins your awareness to the quality of breath in and out. It's a part of the body you can just anchor attention on. Then maybe the navel, what we call navel gazing. Yeah, it actually is a thing. You can meditate on that part of the body because it is a very auspicious part of the body that helps to also capitalize your breathing. So as you breathe in, you're breathing into the navel, you're also expanding out the back. So focusing on breathing, focusing on the entirety of the body, as the Buddha tells us in the mindfulness teaching. Breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I am aware of my whole body. And here's hopefully what might be helpful. The Buddha doesn't say just breathe in and concentrate on the body, but contemplate the body from within the body. What he's saying is meditate on the body not as something over there. The body is not this thing over there. It's not something you are dissociating from in order to bear witness to it, but rather deepen yourself into the body so you're getting a full experience in this moment of your body, and let mindfulness go deep into that experience. In other words, don't rush the process of being in this human body, but let yourself settle deeply into the body, into every part of it. This is shamatha. This is concentrative attention that leads to calm abiding. And he begins with the breathing. He begins with then the physical body, the elements, the various parts of the body. We've done those meditations in the past. And then moving into the second foundation of feelings, which here is like just noticing the sensory body. Are you feeling agitated or calm? Are you feeling, or just what's alive for you in your direct experience? Is it pleasant or unpleasant? And, or neither? Is it just sort of, oh, here is feeling? And by doing this mindfulness practice, we are doing shamatha. We are doing concentrated attention that is leading to a calmer way of abiding. The third foundation of mindfulness, of mind, of mental thoughts as well as emotions are often categorized as part of mind, but they're also part of feeling. And all of these are leading to insights. They're all leading us to a refinement, an attunement, a subtle attunement of awareness that begins to open us to realizations about who we are not, what is the source of my dissatisfaction in this life? What is the source of my freedom? What are the nature of things? They are impermanent. Why do I suffer? Because things are impermanent. How can I be free from that suffering? To embrace impermanence, to understand the principle of non-self, that things just sort of arise and disperse. And yet, at the heart of that is also this quality that is rarely talked about, of changelessness. The changelessness, the only thing that is really fairly constant, as the Buddha says in Satipatthana, maintaining continuous mindfulness, a continuous flow of mindfulness. This is the training, and it's very quiet the way he says this in the text. But practice with continuous mindfulness, that's an important part, because what it implies is that there is a flow of continuity in the practice that isn't ultimately broken by, here is a mind state, oh, it's gone, here's another one, and it's gone, all the way down to even awareness itself. But rather, we're rightfully relating the arising and dispersing to just about every other experience that we can possibly have except the source of awareness itself, which is self-evident when we get there, and it is constantly abiding. Now, when we make that permanent, if that's possible for us, which I believe it is, and I've experienced a certain amount of that in my life, then our life begins to change. We're not on autopilot. We're not in the default mode network where everything is just reactive, but we're really able to be more, I think, in a state of wholeness, in a state that is more inclusive of things, not this instead of that, but rather, oh, now I'm experiencing this refined awareness in addition to the things that are difficult. It's not just one or the other. So in that sense, when we're cultivating concentrative attention, really what we're talking about here is just the first step in what is called shamatha. And the first step is that effortful, perhaps, practice of just keeping the mind steady, stabilizing attention. And when I say effortful, I'm not talking about control or this image of yoking it like you maybe have in yoga, not knocking yoga, because I think one of the early Yoga Sutras is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is yoga is the cessation of activity. It's the cessation, it's not the subduing of activity. It's the same in Buddhism. We're not subduing the mind, but we are gently training it to remain, learning to stay, as Pema Chodron has said so often. But that's one part. We are also cultivating a second state, which is relaxation, a deepening of calm, easeful abiding, openness, yeah, relaxing, the tranquility. This is the calm abiding that now arises naturally because the mind is stabilized on something that is wholesome. So we have that stabilizing the mind with intention. We have the deep relaxation that eventually arises naturally. But then we have a third quality, and that is clarity. So even though once the mind has become stable, even if it sometimes drifts, we're aware that it's leaving. It's like we did in the meditation. If your mind is drifting and you notice it, it means you're being mindful. You haven't been carried away, hijacked by it, but you're seeing it. Oh, okay, it's drifted. That's good news. Then just bring it gently back to whatever you're practicing on, to the practice or your own anchor. But this sense of clarity, this acuity of mind that begins to become more present to you, because the mind is concentrated, because you are relaxed, the mind opens in its clarity, in its acuity. There is a freshness to it. There is an immediacy to the mind as it perceives things that then sort of enter into that mind space and then dissolve. It's really quite interesting that we don't have to apply so much effort for this. In fact, quite the contrary. We just need patience. We need breath. We need the anchors. Yeah. But that's not the end, even at that point. So here we're at sort of the earlier stages of what we call cultivating a samadhi state, yeah, a concentrative stillness. And yet there is also what we can call a collectedness of mind. It's as often the word that is used, a gathering back to the center, all of these disparate parts of mind that are seeking to travel away from the home, away from the source, and gathering them back together at the center. This is why practicing with the center of the forehead or with the center of the body, that inner channel, that inner court channel, the avaduti or the sushumna, is actually a home for all of these states. Gathering the mind together, collectedness of mind, bringing it back, so that there is more of a sense of then fullness, wholeness, that we can then bring back to our experience of the body and of the space around us and ultimately the world. So we can also see this as cultivating, at the heart of this practice is a one-pointedness, what in Sanskrit is often called ekagrata, or one-pointedness of mind. That we're focusing so that the mind is pointed on one thing. The more that we are able to rest on that thing, whether, let's say, it's a candle flame or the breath, we actually join with it more and more deeply. There is a breaking down of the separateness. Does that make sense? That there's a joining. The awareness is touching the candle. The candle is touching our awareness. There is a joining of that experience. This is a higher yogic state, but it's not that far with just some practice, yeah? It's one-pointedness and what we call sense of unity within the stillness. I think, Meg, it was you who pointed that out this morning in the sutra study. I think you mentioned something. We were kind of talking about some of these things with respect to one of the texts. Tajay was leading us. And didn't you say that your experience of some of that was, it was almost like a oneness at the heart of that Do you recall what you said? You said it so nicely.
I don't remember. I think I commented on the breath being kind of three qualities that I think make it a unifying process for us.
Mm,
Uh, the present moment and the um, kind of more subtle
mm,
level, and just the purity of it, being free of concepts. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't remember the oneness.
You did use the word oneness. That's what stood out to me. Anyway, that's what I'm getting at here. Um, and ultimately, as Ken pointed out, he was glad that we did the awareness of awareness. What we come to find is that with a refinement of that attunement, of that awareness, of that attentiveness, we actually can become aware of the awareness itself. This too is part of shamatha. This too is a profound moment where we realize, wow, this clear sense of presence, I can actually meditate on this too. And I'm meditating on it from that place and meditating on that place as I'm meditating from it simultaneously. What we call that is then when everything becomes sort of contained and unified in that oneness, this is what we call single taste in Mahamudra. We can also call it a no pointed awareness. No pointed awareness. We've gone from a very singular focus to a very wide, expanded focus because we're focusing on the source of that focus. And it's happening now. Yeah, it's happening only in the present. We can't go, oh, someday I will have this experience that I'm having now. We can only feel it when we're really fully in the moment, at the heart of this practice. This is what the shamatha practice of this shining dot that eventually becomes awareness of awareness itself. It moves from gross level. Often in shamatha, you'll begin with focusing, meditating on, let's say, a pebble. Yeah, this is one of the imagery moments. Also, there can be focusing on the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and so on. But as far as mental objects, we're talking about like a pebble, then meditating on a small image of the Buddha in the center of the forehead. It goes from sort of more gross level manifested objects to subtler qualities. And so Shining Dot is, I think, one of the um, sort of mid signs, what we call signs or objects that we imagine, that we meditate on. Um, anyway, shamatha is its own event. Some evening we can look at sort of the 9 stages of this practice. But the point here is that this term samadhi, concentrative attention as a sense faculty, is both a sense of concentrative attention that is not filled with effort, and all the way to a sense of oneness and collectedness of mind that is similar to the yogic view of absorption. In fact, in the Theravada tradition of Buddhism, the jhanas, the main, I think the 4 jhanas, are also called absorptions. And there's a reason why that word is also considered samadhi as opposed to just concentration. So when we see concentration in these teachings, and that includes the Eightfold Path, the 7th of the Eightfold Path is right concentration. We are talking about this process that is not just an effortful control of mind, but it is a giving of oneself over to one's own deepest awareness, to the heart of what is effortless abiding, and also to that doorway that opens us to wisdom. And that's why shamatha is often then followed with what is called vipassana or vipassana. Vipassana is the Pali, vipassana, or insight meditation. And often it's claimed that that this stage of insight, of cultivating right seeing, yeah, is essential for awakening. That it's hard to get there just through shamatha. And there are debates between various schools in Buddhism where it's like, no, all you need to do is shamatha and you can awaken that way, or nope, you need to have vipassana or vipassana in order to awaken. Those arguments to me are, fairly, they're red herrings, because part of shamatha already is imbued with insight. They're not separate. It's just that through shamatha, through samadhi, when you start realizing this sense of collectedness of mind and wholeness, you're already realizing things about yourself. You're gaining insight into the nature of your mind and into the nature of things themselves. So there is a back and forth that's already happening right when you begin to sit and practice mindfulness of breathing, or the calm abiding that arises out of attending to breath. So not to worry if you've read things, oh, well, you have to do this first and then this comes. What we're talking about is setting the stage for the next and the final stage of these faculties, which is wisdom, which is a natural outgrowth of this process that we have talked about, and why these five indriyas, these five faculties, must be in perfect balance with each other. Now, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentrative stillness, or samadhi, which is its own term. There is no direct translation of that. So we can just call it samadhi. And then finally, wisdom. And so there's this continuum. We begin with concentrative stillness, relaxation, calm mind, and then clarity and a sharpness, a vividness of mind that leads to an awareness that is more open than simply a focused mental state or focused attention. And realizations coming that, wow, I'm actually able to feel the source of this awareness, what we can call meta-conscious awareness, as opposed to metacognitive awareness. Has anybody heard this term, metacognitive awareness? I know a couple of you have in the course. Metacognitive is really sort of thinking about your own thoughts. And so metacognition, sort of thinking about my thoughts. Meta being reflexive, like turned back onto me. So metacognitive awareness is my awareness of my thoughts. And sometimes this is used for the awareness of awareness, but I think it's a misnomer. I would call it meta-conscious awareness. Meta-conscious awareness is I am aware of my own consciousness. I'm aware of my own awareness. Then that really is ultimately where all of these teachings are pointing us. This is sort of the gold refined from the ore, or the lotus from the mud of transformation. And I hope through this it doesn't feel totally remote and unobtainable. Why? Because it is already there. It is already present to you. You don't have to go anywhere. Yeah? It's covered over with so much stuff. So much of the conditioning we carry. As we talked about last week, Shantideva talks about the woundedness of the mind. We have to face that, yeah? But I think the faith element, when we began all the way at the beginning, faith is knowing this is who I am, even if I don't feel it. I don't need empirical evidence here. Or I'd never feel it. I'd never even feel a little bit calm or peaceful if it wasn't already a quality I carry. And why the source of our well-being, the source of our awakening, is already there at the heart of your own mind. What a blessing. This is the good news in a tradition that begins with life is suffering. And so if we have the patience on this path to get to this point, hey, you have the information. Just put it to the test, see if it's true for you, as the Buddha said. And then we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens next.